Jono, how are we, sir?
Happy New Year to you, Matt. It's been too long.
It's been too long, and you know what else is too long? It's been too long since New Year's. You can't say that anymore. I got told off the other day. Hey, well, look, it's interesting times in the space, and by interesting I mean really boring. Nothing seems to be moving in the space. Where's the excitement gone?
Well, look. I'm in the worst sector of that, the absolute junior sector. At least when there's some positive news, the bigger guys are seeing a little bit of movement or a little bit of volume. But we need sentiment back in this market. We need investors to come back and realise the risk on.
But what's
Otherwise,
that?
it's
What's
going to be
that take?
tough.
What's that going to take? Because there's obviously disconnect. The markets are down across the board. Uranium price went on a run up at the beginning of last year, and last year was going to sit, wait, and see. So what do you think retail want to see? What do you think? Even the institutional investors want to see.
So I mean, investors who invest in us want to see that spot price, and it shouldn't be spot, but it's whatever they look at spot, not term, but they want to see spot. Going back through 80 through 90, and you'll end up seeing more volume coming back in, and for us especially, we're quite a high torque stock, so we get volume, we'll get re-rated up. The second thing in Australia is election season. We'll talk a bit more about that in due course, but some resolution left, right, or centre on that. Either way, resolution is a good
Right.
thing.
Okay. Well, we will talk about the politics in a second because that's really, really interesting, and your view is very, very helpful. But in the meantime, whilst the market's not doing very much, you're hanging around with Miss America. What's that about?
Miss Stanky. So, look, I'm well aware, Matt. I probably don't do enough for charity. Too busy. So I do volunteer some time for Nuclear for Australia, which is a registered charity. It happens to be Australia's largest grassroots pro-nuclear essentially a support group looking to overturn the ban we have in nuclear energy in Australia. Founded by a young chap, Will Shackle, who's now 18, but he founded it from his bedroom after doing a school project on it and didn't like the fact that nuclear's banned. He now has over 86,000 supporters. Will brought Grace Stanky, 2023 Miss America, out for a national tour. Running around with a whole bunch of experts. I did some of those events. Fascinating to see all sorts of, starting off from misogyny, but also, the turnout that it generated, the media interest it generated, the good discussions. I was really pleased with the way the tour went. Yeah.
And when you say that, so what was she bringing? What was she over here to try to do or try to help with?
Yeah, so Grace's origin story is interesting. I mean, she's young, 23 or 4, but has already been, she's been named on the Forbes 30 under 30 for energy. She's a nuclear energy, she knows the stuff. A nuclear engineer, she knows the stuff. And her passion started when she was quite young. So while she's only 24, she's been at this for quite a long time. I know, since she was sort of 17. And the idea was to bring her out to show the younger generation, but also females, that there is a future in nuclear. Obviously in Australia, and it's probably the same in the UK, there's a marked gender difference between male and female support for nuclear energy. And while some people may think that bringing out a Miss America is not the way to win over female voters, when you look at Grace's social media followers, statistics, actually, it's very even, about 50-50 male-female, which would have surprised some people. So look, the events were basically all sold out across Australia, and generated a lot of media interest. It went well.
But okay, but more than that, bring more females into the space engineering more broadly. Great. But what did it do politically? Did this raise the profile? Was it a case of look at what we're doing in the US? You can do more here down in Australia. I mean, what else was going on?
So certainly raised the profile, and she did attend a session at Canberra Parliament House. But also, what you guys don't understand is in Australia there is so much misinformation still about the nuclear industry. And yeah, we've largely moved past the memes of Simpsons and Three-Eyed Fish, but there's still a huge amount of nuclear misinformation that is provided from the Labor Party and the Smart Energy Council and the Climate Council and all these other places. And so having high profile, good demographic experts come down and talk common sense and answer questions is extremely valuable. We're still starved for that information, and knowing Will, who runs Nuclear for Australia, there was a lot of content captured from a video perspective. So I'm sure there will be social media posts and snippets for the next few months as we run up to a federal election.
And do you think it helps of having people from outside of the politic of Australia coming and having these conversations? Was it any politer than the kind of barracking that politicians do to each other in-house?
So I think there is hey, we can learn from America's really good at nuclear. And in fact, some of the other experts on the tour were also American. There's a chap called Mark Schneider who, he's got the coolest job in the world because he used to drive nuclear submarines as well as nuclear aircraft carriers. Now works down in Perth for AUKUS. So there is that benefit, but at the same time, there was a skepticism of, what can we learn? What can we learn down under from a bloody American? And try to sort of dismiss her ability to contribute to the national debate. That was pretty disappointing, but not surprised by some of the media who tried that angle. I think they were sorry that they tried that angle. One of them in particular tried that sort of quite dismissive questioning straight after Grace got off a 30-hour flight. And she walked straight into a press conference and batted those questions back quite expertly, actually. And to the extent that even the ABC, which people may or may not know is the Australian Broadcasting Commission, it's a lefty kind of media organisation we have in Australia. Even the ABC started running positive articles on Grace's tour, and that upset the left wing of our politics over here, and they're claiming now that the ABC's gone mainstream and is supporting the push for nuclear, and how dare they actually change sides?
Well, and what about the politicians themselves? Did she sway any politicians?
So she was at Parliament House, and all the main politicians, they were given months of notice, Energy Minister, Prime Minister, all that kind of stuff. They all failed to turn up, except a lady, a senator from Victoria called Lydia Thorpe. Now, you people in the UK may remember Lydia because she was the one that not so long ago yelled at King Charles when he was down in Australia and yelled some quite nasty things. So Grace said she took it as an honour that Lydia took it upon herself to yell at her as well. Quite a funny media moment.
Good attitude. the shouty woman at the back. I am honoured. Okay, right. Okay.
I think that, to be clear, the shouting woman was yelling, "Oh my God, you're destroying your children's future and your children's future because of radiation." And I think Grace answered back, "You get more radiation from eating a banana than you do from standing next to a nuclear power plant."
It's amazing.
Some common sense facts.
Well, so some common sense and facts and data. It's amazing what happens. But I often say to our subscribers, like, when the information changes, it's okay to change your mind. But I think with politicians, that they've taken a stance and they're not moving for anyone. And with regards to what else the sort of tour covered, were there other things that she was focusing in on?
Yeah. So the tour went around all the capital cities of Australia, then went to the regional towns which have been designated as future nuclear sites by the coalition. So they're basically towns that all have existing coal plants in them that are scheduled to close. It's interesting when you see those regional communities who are energy literate. They've got workforces that work on turbines. The level of understanding and excitement actually was quite interesting. They like the idea of long stable jobs. And one of the comments was, the highest paid union jobs in the world are nuclear jobs. So it's strange why the unions in Australia aren't all over this. We also did a site tour of a facility called the Sandy Ridge facility, which is Australia's commercially operated radioactive waste repository. I should note, full disclosure, I was heavily involved with getting that up and running. I reckon that's the proudest thing I think I've ever done in my life from a career perspective. And so going to see that and showcasing with the media that was all out there how damn good that facility is quite phenomenal. It is most similar, I guess, to what you call the LLWR site in Cumbria that you have in the UK. It just shits all over it in terms of how good the safety case is in Sandy Ridge versus LLWR.
Okay, so it's a busy old time there. So when Grace was there, you said that your buddy Chris Bound didn't bother to show up, but I think he's gone missing completely. He's also disappeared from X. Exactly. What are you going to do?
Yes, so Chris, so I have a theory on this, right? But yes, early in the new year, maybe as a New Year's resolution, Chris decided to quit X and his 142,000 followers, which was a lot for an Australian politician. But the vibe is, and he's gone across to Blue Cow or Blue Sky, whatever it's called, because apparently it's a more respectful a dialogue. Chris got a little bit sick of being community noted, actually. But the theory goes that, look, we are coming up into an election in Australia soon. It will be called soon, which means in 6 weeks after it's called is the election. And the view is that campaign headquarters for the Labor government have probably told Chris to shut the fuck up. Sorry, be quiet, because he's kind of annoying, and his social media posts are sort of not helping. Even for people who support his policies, don't necessarily like his social media. So I'm pretty sure Labor campaign HQ has told him to niche the X.
Right. Well, yeah, in an election year, that probably makes a lot of sense if he's got that kind of personality online, shall we say? Well, there's someone else who's also. So go on.
Just on that. Sorry, he's now facing a challenge in his seat. So his seat is the seat of McMahon in Western Sydney, and he's now facing a challenge from an independent who is quite cleverly going out after this quite personal, just pissed off with energy policy kind of voter. And this particular guy is a former Liberal bad boy. He got expelled from the Liberal Party for something. I'm not quite sure what. But he's heavily involved in social media, and the engagement he's getting is quite interesting. So it's going to be very interesting to see if the Energy Minister has a real fight on his hands in that seat.
But what's happening in the Oz? I mean, just honing in on this one specifically is, in terms of energy prices across Australia, and I'm talking all energy. Obviously, you kind of got the kind of gas component up north. Well, yeah, over in I think Queensland, isn't it? I think and Northern Territory. It's very, very topical at the moment in terms of the sense of people are pissed off with where this is, what's happening in Australia, the cost of it, and this is affecting people's pockets and everyday life. So, what is the mood of the nation generally on energy? What the Australian government's doing about that one? In fact, all that kind of very sort of liberal casual decision making.
Yeah, I mean, it is an emotive issue, not helped by the fact that there were some very strong promises provided by our government saying that renewables would make our power prices go down by $275 a year. They were very specific. They gave a number. Wasn't a wise move. Obviously, they've gone up by about $1,000 since then. So very high. What the government has done is provide energy rebates. So official data on energy prices in Australia, they might look okay, but you have to strip out of them the hundreds and thousands of dollars of energy rebates the government gives us. And so we have the Energy Minister literally there with a straight face saying energy prices haven't gone up. That's because you've funded them with rebates, you retard. And that trying to be too clever by half with voters, people do see through that. And so that hasn't gone down. Obviously people appreciate energy price relief because they need it, but the underlying cause for that, they see right through it.
But is that what's the number one driver? Like over here, when we've got election time, is we got to focus on the NHS and we got to fund more, put more money into the NHS. That's the key driver, and then sort of the economics follows after that. But it very rarely is it pointed towards energy as part of that kind of cost base and economics. So for you, obviously, like we've got vested interest. Maybe we're drinking the Kool-Aid a bit here, but where does energy sit in the mix?
Yep. Yeah, so the overall number one issue is cost of living, right? And that will be played out in many different machinations in this federal policy. Energy plays into that because what people are about to say is, there's a reason why your food prices are going up at the supermarket, because food needs to be refrigerated when it's trucked. It needs to be packaged. It has a high energy input. Energy goes into everything, and energy prices are through the roof. And it's such an easy thing to get a screen grab of a poor business owner somewhere saying, "Oh my God, my energy price has gone up by X amount. We can't afford to do the other day they had a dry cleaner who relied on a lot of gas, and so there was the poor dry cleaner there saying his gas bill has gone up by some extraordinary amount. They use a lot of gas." So it is an emotive issue, but it's secondary to the overall cost of living crisis, and that for Australians also embodies a housing crisis, because rents and costs for houses have gone through the roof as well, which I believe you've probably got in the UK as well.
And we're building another 1.2 million houses to kind of solve that problem. So is that the same in Australia? Is there going to be more building property?
So they're supposedly going to build more houses, but the problem is we don't have anyone to build them. But we've got high immigration. But strangely enough, like a hairdresser is on a skilled migrant list into Australia, but a builder's not. It kind of doesn't make sense. We want all your English builders to come out to Australia for a better life, right? Maybe we don't need as many hairdressers and other things. So there is a question there about why the 482 skilled migrant visa program doesn't slightly get amended to actually get some skills in the door to help us with this problem.
Right. Well, you're welcome to them, because I think we're almost building too much, and certainly in a lot of the wrong places. But that's personal politics. Look, okay, we'll see what happens, and we're heading for June. Is that right, for the election? Is that right?
Oh, look, it may well be. It may be as early as late April.
Okay.
So it late April to mid-May, somewhere around there.
Gotcha. Okay. We'll look out for that, because obviously have big repercussions in terms of the energy conversation dialogue and knock-on effects for a lot of metals, not just uranium and nuclear. Now, talking of people disappearing off the face of the earth, and maybe he's hanging out with Chris Bowen. Dr. Karl, how is he? Dr.
Karl. So Dr. Karl was a bit of a childhood I was a fan. Dr. Karl is a science communicator in Australia. The zany science guy, that used to do all the cool sciencey factoids on radio. Dr. Karl was sort of, unfortunately, in the top trending social media people a few weeks ago, because he came out and shot down Will Shackle, who was the guy that founded Nuclear for Australia. And decided when someone says something pro-nuclear, he'd just go and block the account. And so there was a big furor over how many people he ended up blocking. Even like one of my tweets now, I don't have many followers on Twitter, Matt, maybe 4,000 or something. Hey, anyone out there, follow me on Twitter at CXUASX. But even my tweets were on the topic of like getting 100 and something thousand views or whatever they're called. It just went through the roof. So poor Dr. Karl has lost a lot of fans, I'd say. He's been found out as being a perhaps leftist ideologue, where I just wanted him to be a science guy. So unfortunate. And he blocked me too. So I don't know what he's up to because I can't see.
Right. I think we're guilty of it as well on this show, of showing your political leanings, but it's hard not to. And that's his prerogative. All on him. I don't know if it'll damage his brand elsewhere. We shall see. Okay. Well, anyway, Dr. Karl, you can go have a look. You're interested in the sciencey type things. Right. And just coming back to the politics. So the Labour Party's in at the moment. Do you think they'll stay in? Do you think they'll change? Will Albo change his thinking?
Yeah, that's very topical. It seems that every day or every few days there's a different poll which says something slightly differently. Labor is behind about 51-49 or 52-48 with the Liberals ahead. But, in our weird two-party preferred system, it gets down to the seats and how many seats Labor will lose. Labor will lose majority government, no doubt. The question is whether they hang on to a minority government with the help of the Greens Party in Australia and what we call the teals, which are these sort of independents that are not a party, but they have a common funder, which is an odd situation. And you're not allowed to call them a party because they get very upset if you call them a teal party. So they're independents that just happen to have a lot of funding from the same organisation, which is called Climate 200. One, it's either going to be a minority Labor government or a Liberal government. Probably Liberal in majority if they get that far. Just Liberals don't have as many people to form minority government with. Going to be really interesting to see as the campaign kicks off how those polls move, because the Liberal leader, a guy called Peter Dutton, is variously known as Mr. Potato Head or Voldemort, because there is a slight physical similarity. But he campaigns so he might not be social media friendly, but he campaigns quite well as a sort of the strong man. In recent times, his campaign he's outperformed the Prime Minister Albo, who is the nicer kind of guy, but actually is a pretty shit campaigner. So, we'll see. It's going to be a really interesting election campaign.
Yeah, it should be. So maybe a case of Expelliarmus for them, or some kind of consortium type government affair, which may paralyze the decision making and action. So you prefer for a nice, clean, outright win, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
I think a minority government is going to be horrible.
Yeah.
I would prefer that Labor got in with the majority, because if they're going to be held to ransom by the Greens, the Greens have already been putting forward policy demands, which are quite interesting.
Okay, well, let's broaden this slightly. Let's go a little bit global here. So we've got countries all around the world. The build out is not in dispute. SMRs coming in, even micro reactors as well. But what's that? It helps with the thematic, but kind of so what? It seems the market seems to be saying to us.
So for in uranium, right? I mean, future uranium demand is great, but new builds are a way out, as we know. But what you're seeing here, like you're seeing Belgium reversing plans to close plants soon. You've seen Spain voted overnight. I think the Spanish Parliament voted in a non-binding resolution, to be clear. But the Spanish Parliament voted to keep those plants open, not start closing them in 2027, right? After there was a big, I'm sure you saw the images of like 10,000 people marching to protest the potential closure in Spain. Those things where you're reversing closures that were going to happen soon, that's really interesting for uranium, right? Because that hits the front end of the uranium curve more. And especially if the plants have been running down their inventory, they'll have to buy up. If they're going to keep plants open, they'll have to buy up and buy a few years of inventory straight away. So all that near-term stuff is really exciting. And then, you look at, and this is in your part of the world, you've got the German elections coming up on the 23rd of February. And, if it rolls the way it looks like it'll roll, you're going to get German restarts being considered. It's not a no-brainer they get done, but the momentum actually is there, which means the only one that's really not doing anything that is currently closing and is Taiwan. They're still looking to close their reactors, although there are many people telling them they're stupid to do that. But that phase out is still ongoing.
Yeah,
all the others look like this.
Yeah, we should say. I think the AfD looking quite strong in Germany, and but the key driver there is around conversation around immigration, not necessarily energy. So we'll have to see what that looks like in reality, and hopefully wise heads prevail. Now, obviously, the big thing that's happened since we last spoke is obviously Trump has been hard at it, issuing orders left, right, and center, and so clarifying things in Ukraine, which obviously might calm things down there a little bit, but also tariffs seem to be the topic of now. What does that do for Australia? We've seen a few exemptions being talked about, but what's the reality on the ground?
Well, first of all, there is a discussion over here whether our Prime Minister, who is from the left side of politics, can negotiate or deal with Trump. We have a situation where the Australian ambassador to the US at the moment is a guy called Kevin Rudd. Now, that may ring a bell because it's a former Australian Prime Minister. Who famously, by the way, has quite a potty mouth and a bad temper. He's been caught on these hot mic moments, these off takes of videos going absolutely berserk. It's hilarious. Kevin said some rather nasty stuff about Trump during the election process, and he's now sort of thought to be sort of quite ineffective as an ambassador to the US because Trump won't talk to him, and there's been suggestions that he should get sort of pulled back to Australia. But in light of that, our PM Albanese has had a discussion with Trump on tariffs, specifically on aluminium tariffs, which 25% aluminium tariffs were announced yesterday. And he sort of got off the phone and quite triumphantly said, I've had a great chat with Trump and, I think we're going to get some exemptions. The feedback from the Trump side wasn't quite the same messaging, where basically the White House is saying that Australia has not held up its end of the bargain, and that Australia was killing the global aluminium market with our exports. So wait and see on that one. It's going to be particularly interesting. From my perspective, and in the uranium trade, it's quite exciting. We look at what Trump is suggesting with Ukraine. Hey, I'll give you military aid, but you're going to have to give me $500 billion worth, what he called rare earths, but I think he meant critical minerals, natural resources, let's call them that. There is an interesting parallel to what's happening in WA and Australia, where we're providing, we're getting AUKUS, we're getting nuclear submarines from the US and from the UK. It's called AUKUS. We just paid actually $800 million to the US as a progress payment on that arrangement, but we're still refusing to just simply give the US mine uranium out of WA. That's a situation that is getting a little bit more topical, given that the US is still net short uranium, especially after Russian and Kazatomprom issues. And as a tier one Western-friendly, strategic ally, and they're giving us nuclear technology, why don't we give them nuclear fuel back? So I'm kind of hoping, and there's been a bit of chatter that Trump likes a good deal. Well, he might try and deal on that, and that'll be great for our sector.
Well, I think the other thing Mr. Trump likes is unadulterated praise. I think we'd our proposed ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, was guilty of doing a RUD, as it's called, and being less than pleasant about Mr. Trump earlier. He backed down like a little, and they got what they want at the end of that. So hopefully some lessons to be learned there, Mr. Rudd.
I'll give you. You've sort of used a cultural appropriation there. Doing a RUD used to mean something different. So when Rudd was foreign minister, before he became prime minister, he was caught in a strip club, in skulking out of a strip club, kind of drunk, and so that became known as doing a RUD for a while.
Okay.
But now doing a RUD may well mean speaking badly of Mr. Trump,
saying nasty things. How dare he? Okay. Well, we'll see how those relationships turn out, and what it actually does for Australia moving forward. But it's a nice thought around energy swap or transaction there. Okay, so let's talk about some of the alternatives now, because if we're looking at nuclear, us Iranian bulls are, we're head down. uranium's the only answer. But the truth is, conventional gas projects also part of the energy solution. Renewables, as subsidized and as costly and as ridiculous as some people may think they are part of the solution. We need all of the above, and I'm also going to throw green hydrogen in there. And I think you Aussies have had a crack at that, right? How's it working out?
Yeah, well, so my favourite Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, did support about eight of these projects through some federal funding. Well, unfortunately, 7 of them have just fallen over, including one from BP recently. Actually, you guys walked away from the Kwinana hydrogen project. But the reason that this is fundamental to the Australian energy landscape, people don't understand. I'm going to spend 1 minute with you, and I'm sure you'll get it. So we have this, our market operator, the Australian Energy Market Operator, or AEMO, produces a plan about how the market will operate. It's called the Integrated System Plan. And what that supposedly shows is that renewables are cheap and they'll work. The problem, obviously, we know with the renewables is that sometimes they're there and sometimes not, and sometimes it's very, very much there. And if you've got overproduction in renewables, that's tricky because you need a balance in your system. So what our energy market operator, or Mr. Bowen, has sneakily done is assumed that there will be 14 gigawatts of green hydrogen demand put into the system, which only turn on when there's enough green energy, excess wind and solar being produced, and then conveniently switch off when the market needs it. So not only are you getting horrible utilisation on your electrolyzers, frankly, but it helps balance the system without needing masses of batteries, which are extremely expensive. So to put that in context, 14 gigawatts of green hydrogen, the average daily demand roughly on our NEM, our entire network, is 25 gigawatts. And they're assuming 14 gigawatts will sit there just soaking up and effectively smoothing the network. Now, when you start going, that's just not going to freaking happen, that means, okay, well, we're going to need a shitload more storage or pumped hydro, whatever it is, to smooth that out, or you're just not going to get the system stability that you need in through this mass renewables. Well, what do you know? That might mean there's a place for nuclear. So it is a really fundamental assumption buried underneath our energy modelling that Joe Public doesn't understand. And it's not going anywhere because all of these projects just keep getting shelved.
Well, it's kind of like I had a conversation with Shell for Christmas, and we're talking about some of their renewable projects. And the bottom line was, and it always comes to this, in the same way when everyone's making money, people are a little bit profligate and they're spending money on things which, make them feel good, right? But ultimately, when things get difficult, they remember it's all about making money. That's why we're in business, guys. And I think, we've seen BHP, we've seen Mr. Forrest, Twiggy, walk away. Woodside's walked away, Origin's walked away. People are walking away from these projects because the harsh reality of business is if you're not making money, your shareholders are pissed off, and you look kind of substandards. And I think that's kind of where we're at now with this energy crisis and trying to be green and trying to do things the right way. And it's just not working, is it?
No. So there are a few others. The Japanese have walked away from some projects in Australia as well. So yeah, we were to be this green energy export superpower, was the term, great little buzzword, which had the benefit of balancing our system through this intermittent hydrogen demand, which I've just explained. And it is simply a house of cards. So once you pull the fact that green hydrogen just does not stack up, then all of it comes crumbling down. And we're going to start seeing the unfortunate effects of that pretty soon. Watch this space on hydrogen. It's nowhere. It's going nowhere fast. Actually, you wouldn't know this, Matt. I actually used to be the CFO of a green hydrogen company. Funnily enough. So I want people to know that I'm not anti renewables. I used to do wind as well. I'm not necessarily anti-hydrogen. But with hydrogen right now, with the efficiencies that you're getting on the electrolyzers and what's forecast, they don't work at scale. So you're going to need some fundamental improvements in technology or efficiencies to make that ever work.
Well, everything works when you've got free money. Basically, but and that's we want those technologies to become more efficient. We need the money thrown in there, but perhaps when the governments are stuck at the moment with it because they've been printing money for fun for the past few years all across the world. At a moments like this, it becomes you look at it with more scrutiny in the sense that, crikey, guys, there's more important things for us to kind of focus on, and things that kind of work today. And our tax dollars, we don't want to be taxed like this. And our tax dollars, quite frankly, should be spent on better things. Is it a case of that? I mean, you're not wishing away the technology. You want it to work.
Well, you do want it to work, but also it has to be realistic. And so one of the other things that green hydrogen was going to magically do is decarbonise our aluminium sector and substitute out for conventional gas. Well, embarrassingly, we had Australia's largest aluminium company going on, guys, no, sorry, that won't work in the way that you've assumed it will in your policy. So yeah, it's not as easy. I mean, green hydrogen is a wonderful thing. It sounds like you burn it, there's nothing but water, fantastic. But as many people are realising, there are some real technical issues there that, is it the fusion of green energy? Is it always 30 years away? Who knows? But it's not looking like it'll be rolled out in the 2030s.
I think that is the problem. It always seems 20, 30 years away, which, when it's you trying to raise money as a public company is difficult. And maybe the government does need to step in there, but it's clearly not working with the current structure as we see it. And I think that's a broader energy delivery question, and getting that mix is going to be really important. But I mean, the other thing which is also falling down at the moment is obviously the wind component.
Yes. So you guys in Europe have a very large and well-developed offshore wind industry. Obviously some of your auctions not going so well. Australia doesn't have that yet. We've got some designated offshore wind zones that have been declared. We've had parties bidding on them. There were bids received for some of them. The government crowed, fantastic, we're going to put 9 gigawatts of offshore wind into the system. At a horrendous cost. In fact, at a cost that is, more expensive than even they consider nuclear would be. But then suddenly what happened? All these European bidders started pulling out, realising that offshore wind in Australia is tricky. They were looking to put monster turbines floating. Nowhere's ever done the size of these turbines floating before. The cost of it would be extraordinary. So that's, as each developer pulls out of each wind project, again, it's a demonstration that, it is unwise to simply say no to any technology. Why do we ban nuclear in this country? It should be on the table, because you never know when others are just going to fall over.
Yeah, and we've experienced that in the UK. It's the heavily subsidised offshore wind projects and quite a few onshore and quite a few solar projects, taking up valuable farming land. It's kind of ill thought through and ill prepared. In fact, I've got a friend of mine who advises the UK government, or his company does, and he's the owner of the company, and the French government as well. And you have sort of sensible discussions and sensible analysis by independent consultants saying, look, the energy mix looks like this, it probably needs to look like that. Here's how you kind of get that. And decisions are made by politicians who don't necessarily feel that some of these well thought through plans suit their political agenda. So therefore, they keep making the dumb decisions and the expensive decisions.
This is a really good segue back into what I just explained about our Australian Energy Market Operator and the Integrated System Plan, because people think that they've done a scenario analysis and worked out the cheapest way to build. They haven't. What they've done is assumed that in every scenario, every single government policy objective must be met. And then what is the cheapest way of building that? So that means that every policy that has been considered in the Australian energy landscape has 82% renewables by 2030. And every policy has 9 gigawatts of offshore wind in it because that is a policy that the Victorian government decided to put in for no good freaking reason, that they just like the idea of the sound of it. And so you're right. These when they do their system planning, people assume, oh, look, they're engineers that are doing this optimization on our plan. No, it's just like, fuck, how do we polish a turd and try and make it work given these policies that have been come up with by politicians?
Well, it's I think these decisions should be politics, quite frankly. Politicians trying to win votes or keep votes or stay in power or keep their job. That is, a case of show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. Never good. And obviously my earlier point about, when the data changes, it's okay to change your mind. So, highly inefficient process indeed. I mean, so, right, okay, let's just kind of get back to the world of uranium. We've seen all sorts of mess out there. If we're looking in Africa, we're looking in Niger, we've seen the coup still ramifications. Global still not able to get the financing in place. Talk of a JV coming in for outside partner. GoviEx had the project taken off of them. Obviously, Canada, long permitting, licensing delays on that one, and the US is, not a whole bunch coming out of there. Even some of the Aussie players we're seeing in Namibia sort of deferring the start of their projects because the price just isn't there. The contracts, they aren't able to get the contracts at the price they need. So what's going to give?
Yeah, so obviously that's the concept of incentive pricing, which says, you need to incentivize new production into the market. For many years, people thought the incentive price was 60. And then, in the last year or so, people thought the incentive price was 80. Well, no, the incentive price looks like it's 90 through 100. And so you mentioned there are two Aussie developers in Namibia, Bannerman and Deep Yellow. Deep Yellow is the company now run by the daddy, John Borshoff. And John, John's pretty blunt. He's just like, no, I'm not getting out of bed for that price. Not having it. Utilities need to understand that we're in a producer's market right now, and they're going to understand real soon. So new supply is absolutely elastic to that price. So that is why, majority of your analysts are still saying fundamentally that price has to be higher. Although you've had a couple of them start saying this year is just a bit icky because there's all sorts of signals going either way. And, there's obviously not many new builds coming on and requiring new uranium demand today. That said, with Japan starting more reactors, if Spain stops at its reversal, Belgium stops at reversal, Germany starts coming in, and that's why I said those kind of things are important because they affect the nearer parts of the demand profile. You'll hopefully see uranium running. The other thing that has been actually a win, I should say, for BHP, Australia's largest producer of uranium is obviously Olympic Dam. Olympic Dam is going through a monster production upgrade. They're going to double the amount of copper that thing produces. And people have been worried that it would be doubling its uranium output as well. For reasons not exactly explained, BHP's come out and said, no, they're only going to be increasing. Maybe it's to do with the mine plan or whatever, how the ore body works, but they're only going to be increasing production by 1%. So 100% for copper, 1% for uranium. So that's a bit of a sigh of relief in terms for producers to say, well, there's more support to the price.
Okay, interesting times. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
The other Aussie company though, is Peninsula. That is, they're developing the project in Wyoming.
Yep.
And it's word on the street. They said it in their announcement. They're looking for further funding options to see them through commissioning. Commissioning an ISR project is one of the harder things you'll ever do in your life. And they're pushing out milestones, and obviously, you're at peak cash burn rate when you're commissioning. So again, looking for further funding. What does that do? The more and more funding requires pushes up, their break-even price, right? So, and that should get into production later this year.
Yeah, should do. Obviously, Wayne highly stepped down. And we got the new guy, George.
Yes, yeah.
Stepping up, and it's been a difficult path for them. But hopefully they get over the line this year.
Troubled birth, yeah.
Troubled birth, indeed.
Yeah.
Right. When we better wrap up now. But before we do, what are you guys up to at Cauldron?
Yeah. Well, let me pitch Cauldron.
Okay, please do.
So look, I'm speaking next week at the largest mining conference for juniors in Australia. It's called the Explorers Conference in Perth. As you can imagine, Perth being the Wild West of the mining industry. So, we've got a lot on. What will I be talking about there? Look, obviously the politics stuff of how the WA state election and the federal election all weave in together. I'd urge anyone to look at my presentation slides. I've just got to try and get them through the ASX, because the ASX has this funny thing where they won't let me make political statements in a presentation I put up on the platform. The problem is that, but I have to put up material price sensitive information, and for me, there's a balance there, because the most material price sensitive information is politics that I'm not allowed to put up. Anyways, we'll get some slides up there. I'm also, talking about the Meningie South discovery that we made late last year, and so now that drilling is finished for the season, we're doing all the post-drilling analysis, the resource work to try and, as we've already stated, try to get a maiden resource out there at Meningie. So we were pretty damn pleased about the amount of uranium that we found out there, frankly. So I think that'll be well received when we finally come out with that. And then, work out what we're going to be doing to drill next year. So I drill later this year, next drilling season. So subject to, frankly, what happens in the election. So yeah, look, it's interesting. We're going to have a good year, hopefully.
I am glad to hear it, and maybe you can come on and with a proper company interview when you've got time. As always, John, very entertaining, very insightful. And we hope the equities markets do recover, because we could do with a little bit of that. One last
thing for you, Matt.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm surprising you on this.
Go for it.
So yesterday, I sit on the organising committee for the Global Uranium Conference down in Adelaide. I know we wanted to have you down there last year, but travel, logistics and commitments got in the way. Adelaide's beautiful that time of year. So I would, and it's going to be held a little bit earlier this year. So I would highly recommend, and you kick the spots. I must admit, I can't remember the dates, but we're going to keep talking on that, because we want you down there.
Well, let's do it. I had to be in LA, and thank goodness I did, because it basically set us up alight 2 weeks later. So I make time for that in the diary for sure. Johnny, as always, brilliant stuff. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, mate.